name is Father Ignatius Mazanowski, and I've written the book, The Virtue of Mercy and Forgiveness, Keys to Healing a Broken Heart. And today I'm going to begin reading that book to you. I'll be reading pages 15 to 23, and the acknowledgments, the preface, and the introduction. And so let us begin. First, the acknowledgments. Thank you to the many who helped make this book possible, including Neil Lozano, Dr. Bob Schutz, and Dr. Robert Enright, who allowed me to interview them. And thank you to my parents for instilling the value and importance of forgiveness in me and my siblings. Thank you to those near and far who have entrusted me with their hearts and healing journeys. I have learned so much from each of you. And lastly, I give thanks to God for helping me through the process of bringing this work to fruition. And so now the preface. My first encounter with deliverance ministry was when I went to Neil Lozano's Unbound conferences in 2009. After that, I was drawn to learning more about inner healing and deliverance. One of the reasons I felt drawn to this kind of ministry stemmed from my own struggles and eventual healing from mental illness in my early 20s. That experience of suffering, as well as the love and patience my parents and others showed me during that time, helped give me a desire and a capacity to walk with and suffer with others who are in need of healing. In 2014, I had an opportunity to write a dissertation as part of completing my Sacred Theology doctorate, or an STD, at the University of Santa Croce in Rome, Italy. I was interested in focusing my research and writing on mercy and healing. I shared this with my director, Father Robert Gall, Opus Dei, and in response he said to me, "Have you ever thought about forgiveness?" He went on to describe the work of Dr. Robert Enright, the founder of forgiveness therapy, and I was fascinated. Over the next 2 years, I wrote and successfully defended my dissertation and earned my doctorate in moral theology. Later in 2015, 6 priests and I left the Third Order Regular Franciscans to start a new community in Phoenix, Arizona. This new community, officially established in 2016, is called the Franciscan Friars of the Holy Spirit. I ended up leaving the community in early 2019, returning at the end of 2019, only to leave again for good in 2020, when I became a priest for the Diocese of Phoenix. During that transition, from 2019 to the present, I found myself practicing the healing methods that I had written about earlier in my dissertation and sought to teach others regarding mercy, forgiveness, and healing as a process. And my own healing process continues and is ongoing. Today I can say with conviction, not only do I believe in what I've written, but I have also personally lived and experienced great fruit from following the principles that I wrote about. In 2017, I first encountered a Grief to Grace retreat, which is a ministry for those who have been abused. The retreat was started by Dr. Teresa Burke, who also founded the Rachel's Vineyard Retreat for post-abortive healing. Grief to Grace opened my eyes to the fact that many have a need for healing from trauma and abuse. It also helped me identify my own need for healing from the traumatic experiences surrounding my mental illness in my early 20s. For the first time, I realized the trauma and the confusing and painful emotions from those years could be healed after all. In 2019, while taking some time off from ministry, I had the opportunity to seek further healing for my past traumatic memories at the St. Luke Consultation Center in St. Louis, Missouri. The counselors helped me unlock further emotional healing that I did not know was possible. This new experience, primarily through psychological healing, has deepened my appreciation for the need to heal the whole person, psychologically, spiritually, emotionally, and physically. While spiritual healing is important in my area of expertise, psychological healing, which often comes from counselors, is equally important and complementary. All these experiences only increase my conviction that more people can benefit by learning the principles behind mercy, forgiveness, and healing as a process and applying them to their lives. My hope is that you will understand the content of this book, apply it to your own life, and help others apply it to theirs. Father Ignatius Mazanowski, Sedona, Arizona, December 12th, 2021, Feast of Our Lady of Guadalupe. Now the introduction. Blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy. Matthew 5, verse 7. For if you forgive men their trespasses, your heavenly Father also will forgive you. But if you do not forgive men their trespasses, neither will your Father forgive your trespasses. Matthew 6, verses 14 and 15. While there have been a profusion of recent theological and catechetical studies on the virtue of mercy and the benefits of forgiveness, as well as on various pastoral approaches to healing as a process, there has not been an intentional and systematic attempt to bring these three interconnected subjects together. With that in mind, I am setting out to explore the nature of the complementary relationship between the classical, biblical, moral, and theological understanding of mercy, a contemporary psychological understanding of forgiveness, and the role mercy and forgiveness play in the healing process. I believe there is an important convergence and nexus that can be found through bringing these three sources together. This leads to two important questions. One, what is that convergence? And two, what is the nature of the unique nexus that results? An image to describe this nexus of ideas is a three-set Venn diagram, which consists of three overlapping circles. You can see this diagram in the book on page 20. In a Venn diagram, the place where the three circles overlap and intersect is known as a Roulet triangle, and this is filled in with black in the diagram. My goal is to discover where the Roulet triangle is between A, mercy, B, forgiveness, and C, healing as a process, in the hope that discovering this convergence will lead to a deeper understanding of these three concepts and that new insights will be gained through an active intersection and convergence of all three. There are several primary sources for this study. In chapter 1, we will begin with sacred scripture's perspective on mercy and forgiveness. The concepts will be analyzed with a particular focus on the Old Testament concept of mercy and the New Testament teaching of Jesus on mercy found in the Sermon on the Mount and on forgiveness found in the Lord's Prayer. This will include integrating the early church fathers' commentaries on this topic. In connection with this, St. John Paul II's encyclical, Dives in Misericordia, which focuses on the mercy of God the Father and the difference that this makes both interiorly and exteriorly for Christians, will be analyzed. This encyclical is an example of an articulation of the biblical theology of mercy and forgiveness. In chapter 2, the virtue of mercy will be analyzed from a classical moral perspective with an emphasis on the teachings of St. Thomas Aquinas. Born in 1225, died in 1274, a 13th century doctor of the church, a scholastic theologian, and a proponent of a virtue-centered approach to ethics. More specifically, his Summa Theologica serves to outline and explain a virtue-centered ethical approach. Additionally, Aristotle's influence on Aquinas' work will also be considered. Serves Pincares, O.P., a Dominican priest and moral theologian who taught at the University of Freiburg in Switzerland for 25 years and is well known for his contribution to the renewal of the Christological approach to Christian virtue ethics, will also be highlighted. Pincares, in both the Source of Christian Ethics and his articles compiled in the Pincares Reader, uses Aquinas' virtue-centered approach as the basis for his own understanding of moral theology, and his interpretation of Aquinas will be featured. In Chapter 3, forgiveness will be analyzed from a contemporary psychological perspective, with an emphasis on the work of Catholic educational psychologist Robert Enright, Ph.D., a licensed psychologist and professor of educational psychology at the University of Wisconsin-Madison, where he has taught for more than 35 years. Enright is a pioneer in the scientific study of forgiveness and the founder of the International Forgiveness Institute, which seeks to implement and integrate forgiveness curriculum into schools and communities. In his research, he has sought to show the benefits of forgiving by measuring verifiable, evidence-based techniques and cognitive strategies. Currently, there are now more than 1,000 researchers using his scientific approach to forgiveness. Enright's works include Forgiveness is a Choice, The Forgiving Life, and Forgiveness Therapy. His approach to forgiveness focuses on a virtue-centered component and is complementary to Aquinas' understanding of the virtue of mercy. 3 of Enright's peer-reviewed studies will also be examined, including his work on forgiveness as a triad and the complementary nature of his work, and St. John Paul II's and Dives in Misericordia. Finally, the work of Dr. Everett L. Worthington Jr. and his Christian perspective on forgiveness therapy will be addressed in relationship to Enright's work. In Chapter 4, the instruction on prayers for healing, written in 2000 by Cardinal Joseph Ratzinger and published by the Congregation for the Doctrine of the Faith, the CDF, will be examined in relationship to healing ministry. The idea of healing as a process will be explored through the works of 5 practical application experts, including Bob Schutz, PhD, a psychologist, founder of the John Paul II Healing Center in Tallahassee, Florida, and the author of the book Be Healed, A Guide to Encountering the Powerful Love of Jesus in Your Life. Father David Pavonka, TOR, who has done extensive ministry with high school and college students at the Franciscan University of Steubenville, and is the author of Spiritual Freedom, God's Life-Changing Gift. Neil Lozano, founder of Heart of the Father Ministries, author of the best-selling book Unbound, A Practical Guide to Deliverance, and an international expert in healing and deliverance ministry. Edward Smith, Ed D., and his transformational prayer ministry. And lastly, Francis McNutt, PhD, and his Christian healing ministries. The concept of generational or family healing will also be explored through the works of Kenneth McCall, MD, Father John Hanch, CMF, and Father Robert DeGrandis, SSJ. Their work in healing ministry will be examined regarding their relationship between mercy and forgiveness and healing as a process. In chapter 5, I will include a summary of all these ideas. First, the idea of the heart will be explored through the work of Dietrich von Hildebrand in The Heart, an analysis of human and divine affectivity. Second, mercy and forgiveness will be looked at in relation to healing of the heart ministry, the works of Aquinas, Enright, and various healing approaches, healing of the heart as a process, and the role that mercy and forgiveness have in that process. Lastly, I will propose an approach to healing of the heart ministry. This book will demonstrate that extending mercy and forgiveness to those who have hurt us or to ourselves is the first step toward the healing of broken relationships. All 8 healing ministries examined throughout the book will show that forgiveness is a key and integral part of healing. Moreover, what these ministries do not explicitly recognize is that developing the virtue of mercy makes it easier to forgive consistently and more fully. Enright makes a convincing case that when it comes to trauma, forgiveness is a process and a choice. And because healing is a process, forgiveness is the first step toward healing. Forgiveness is not an easy choice to make, but connecting forgiveness to mercy helps us recognize that we can be compassionate to those who have hurt us. There are many intersections between mercy and forgiveness, healing and forgiveness, and mercy and healing. Yet when all 3 points, mercy, forgiveness, healing, come together, as demonstrated by the Roulet triangle on page 20, an important discovery is made. First, it becomes clear that forgiveness needs the virtue of mercy to reach its culmination and completion. Second, healing requires forgiveness, which is facilitated by the virtue of mercy. Finally, if healing is a process, then the process of forgiveness is a process within the healing process. And this takes time. Not only does growing in the virtue of mercy make entering this process easier, but it also transforms the heart of the person seeking healing. This book proposes an important and multifaceted intersection between mercy, forgiveness, and healing as a process.